Welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast number 740. Today, we begin year 17 of the Software Process and Measurement Cast, the SPaMCAST. It was cute 17 years ago. Today, we start with a presentation that Jeremy Berriault did at IdeaFest 2020. The presentation covered using supply chain concepts in an Agile environment. When I originally recorded the session, I felt the idea was interesting, but not very useful. I'm a bit of a packrat. I don't throw anything away. Last week, I rediscovered this file and gave it another listen. I'm glad I'm a packrat. I feel that the idea of using supply chain concepts is a great approach to implementing value chains and mirrors why flow metrics are such a valuable concept. Jeremy was just a bit ahead of his time. Note, the recording is not perfect. There is some external noise from unmuted microphones in the field. I think the bit of interference does not diminish the message. The content is great. Stay with it, and you'll have a lot to think about.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening to everyone, since we're going across many time zones. My presentation is an idea that was based on using the supply chain operations model, or SCORE, within an Agile organization. As we see, you probably have experienced it or have at least seen it, where you may have senior executives or senior managers, when they get certain news on releases or timelines or anything like that, they may do something like this. The big old face palm, shaking their head maybe, depending on the person, maybe saying some not so, or some colorful words as they get through. And when that usually happens, you get into a bit of a rut where you're like maybe playing game, and then you have like executive meetings and trying to track everything, how it's going. And it just doesn't stop anything, but it will maybe cause some obstacles. So this idea that I'm about to present was I'm going to go you through the entire life cycle of the idea, so the formation of the idea. So we're going to go through the discovery mode, the scope that I used, how I deployed it. We're going to go through a couple tests right through this presentation, and like the prototype, so the end point of this idea. So the discovery of this idea actually happened in 2013 on my last course for my MBA. I tried to, initially when I signed up for my MBA, I was going through all the courses. I was signed up for courses that were more lead towards leadership and information technology and for software development to help myself grow. At the time when I was trying to register for my last course, which was an elective, this was the only one available. If not, I would have had to wait like maybe 6 months for the next course. So I read through supply chain management, got through it, and I was actually starting to see the formulation of the idea of now taking supply chain management options and references and models and applying it to a software delivery type organization, and now making it into an Agile organization. So this is what I'm about to show you is based off of a book from David Blanchard. It's his supply chain management best practices. So it's where the idea started to formulate was this part right here was really where it started to kick in. Was a supply chain is a sequence of events that cover a product's entire life cycle. So as everyone sees a supply chain, they see it more as bringing product A to the store for someone to purchase. When I looked at it, I started to see information as the product. And we discussed it earlier in a couple other presentations where they were talking about it as information as like a product. And then we get through a couple others. Sorry, my timer just got in the way here. One of the other things he brings up was that one size does not fit all from a supply chain. So you can't use the same thing. And when the idea started to formulate, I started to see that, like if you look at Scrum, at SAFe, at LESS, even at Waterfall, the general concept, the idea is there on the flow and the guidelines, but everyone's going to be doing something different. So when I started to see this as an idea, I could see that everything was kind of starting to change in how you can use this reference. And supply chain, it's been done for a while throughout different stores and going through like using trains and trucks. But the problem is that even then, this was like 7 years ago, they still found that people weren't doing it right. And if you look at from Agile and software delivery and within the Agile organizations, there are plenty of organizations that say they're doing Agile, but some of the research will say that only 6% are doing Agile well. The other 85% are close to doing it well, with the majority in more of a maturing and adopting model and kind of getting into that loop. And in the end, you're trying to build it best in practice. You are trying to be the best. As we talked about earlier in Halal's, is like the software company that's the best wins. So using a supply chain model, as it describes here, is like, yeah, there's money and there's time that is involved. The good thing is with how we describe and how we find all the metrics, we already have the information there. It's just how we're going to use that information effectively to properly monitor how things go across. So really, with this idea, where it's going to take up would be mostly within the energy, focus, commitment, and guts. And the guts is like taking this idea and going through with it and pushing through. So as we look at a normal supply chain, and the one I'm using here is delivering books to a store. So first you got to cut down the trees. Cut down the trees to make your paper, and then you take the idea, the story, and you put it into the book. You develop the book, and then you sell it in the store. Within each of those parts, you're still delivering like each component to each component. And in this current time, as how everything's going, you hear supply chain a lot, and what you're hearing is that, okay, we're trying to get product A over to the healthcare workers. We're trying to make sure that the stores still have their products. And that's where most people see within the supply chain is just that. Meanwhile, if you look back at how everything is built, it is actually a lot more, because now you're looking at different components being built over time to meet the demand for the next supplier. So from the Supply Chain Council, they have a general view of how a supply chain works. So first you got your supplier one, they have, let's just say we'll use the book, the pulp, and create the paper and send it off, or the trees, which then sends it to supplier two, and then to build off what they need to send off to their next client, they need supplier 3 and 4 to provide that information, to provide that equipment. From there, it goes off to 5, and before 5 can even send it out to any more clients, there could be additional suppliers going through. They formulate, they manufacture their product, and they send it off to the store, to the clients to sell or to buy. Within the supply chain, you could actually have a return. And a good example, I'm in Toronto. We just recently had an issue with the supply chain where there's 200 surgical masks that had to be returned because they're easily ripped. And so it went all the way back through the supply chain to find out where that error was, where that return was, and fix it and send it back in. And here's where the scope of this idea came from. So the supply chain model, as we went through, you can see how information gets passed. And each software organization, most of them will have some form of additional software to add into their work or to do their work. So they have those type of partnerships. And you go across and you leave, you get the end product, you deliver it, end product, and deliver. And as you progress across, you're going to continue to plan and update and move along. So the scope of this idea was to take this type of reference model and move it into a software delivery in an agile organization. So Supply Chain Council was actually created back in 1995. So this SCORE model that you just saw was based out of the development of this organization. And what they wanted to do was to guide all different industries that have a supply chain on how to look through it. And they have those components. So they have plan, source, make, deliver, and return. And in the end, it's to look at your demands, your inventory, and lead times. So they have their own little, each industry would have their own little dashboard to track through. But if you look at those 5 components, that is no different than the basic plan, do, check, act that we use for planning the software, doing the software, checking it, and acting on any sort of changes. Even within regular processes, like so for marketing, for example. Marketing groups, they do have a plan, do, check, act to get their information out there faster to meet the demand. So for us to deploy it, my idea is to have a supply chain agile development. And it's SCAT. It is not trademarked. I don't intend to trademark it. It is really just kind of a quick view of how to take these reference models and apply it to an organization. So again, so what is it? So in the end, it is really just a knowledge sharing program. So you're taking the information and each component within, you are sharing information across so that everyone wins and everyone is understandable. And what this will do is it'll create a transparency. So you'll have the transparency upstream and downstream of how things are flowing. What you're also doing is you're identifying your internal and external partners. So these are the groups that you could have, say, 5 sprint teams within a company that are developing. If you're going through SAFe, they have each feature trains, or they have 5 scrum teams. But these teams are working together and they are partnered in some fashion to ensure that things are moving along. And then your external partners would be maybe companies that are embedded within the software. So there is some software out there, an organization I used to work for a while ago, had a embedded vendor software in their product for reporting. So they are an external partner. But you could also have external partners from a marketing perspective, even from a delivery perspective. You can have those external partners. What you're doing is you're monitoring through trends. So we all have, in all the organizations, we have metrics and we are tracking along. If you look at it from a senior management perspective, sometimes they don't see those metrics or trends until it's too late. So as I spoke about earlier, the meeting where you have the executive given the facepalm because they heard it, they got information that now they have to react to it. What this will do in the end is it will help you create an environment where you're now a little more proactive. You still have to react to some of the data, but you're seeing a trend where you can be proactive to the point to try to mitigate that risk. And you're getting that additional value out of the data. You're seeing how things can flow and how they can improve across, not only within your organization, but help across within the industry. And the biggest component within the supply chain is helping the agility within your senior leadership. Some senior leaders, the ones that I have worked with, they have their general conception of what Agile is. They have the idea in their head of how it's supposed to work, but sometimes they can't wrap their head around how to use it or how to get the right information to make the right decisions. What this will have is with the knowledge sharing is now giving that senior leadership more visibility into how things work. So again, let's look at external partners. So as I said before, you could have a partner where you're embedding a software. So based on Gene Slowinski here, 80% of the deals for partnerships where company A is leveraging company B for either to get into a certain market or to leverage them in some fashion. And based on these stats, the issues with some of the partnerships is, if you look at it, like 30% you'll have success, they feel they're successful on both sides. Everyone wins on both sides. Key thing is knowledge sharing within any sort of supply chain. And these are all aspects that we all know and we have all heard through Agile as we go through and to continuously improve and move forward. This is just another fashion to help get that data and improve that transparency. If you look at it from a traditionalist point of view, you will see from a logistics and then the supply chain management will be inside. The way to view this is, as stated earlier, is when you have the weekly meetings or the monthly meetings, these status meetings with senior leaders, and they now become in more of a reactive mode when they get bad information or get bad news. Not bad information, but bad news. Where things need to change is to be more of an intersectionalist type of view, where you're taking your logistics, so that is moving the information, making sure things work, getting people to do their jobs and get the work done, with the supply chain and moving that information across and intersecting them. So this is where the knowledge sharing happens, in that they're kept informed. Now, each one does have their own separate view on how to get work done from a logistics and supply chain perspective, but there is that information sharing in between that overlaps each other. And now this creates a environment where you're now no longer kind of waiting until the last minute to find out information. You're seeing information as you go along within dashboards or radiator rooms or anything like that, to make the right decisions to go across and to help mitigate any sort of concerns or issues that may occur as you go through. So here's the example we're going to use. I couldn't use development teams because I didn't find any pictures with people. So I found more pictures with just perspective. And that's, again, kind of more real world view. A grocery store could be working with 3 different warehouses on sending in apples. Okay, so 1, 2, and 3, they keep sending the apples to meet that demand. Now let's just say supplier 1 has an issue. All their trucks broke, or there was a fire, for instance, or they just ran out of apples. What the grocery store can now do is now work with the other 2 suppliers to lead into it and help meet that demand. And if you look at it from an internal team perspective, now let's just say these are 3 sprint teams, and one sprint team, as you're seeing information coming across and being managed, that there's going to be some delays or there's going to be something going on. And those teams, with that transparency and understanding how everything's going, could start leveraging off each other to help improve and ensure that, and to mitigate any sort of changes. What this will also do is it will give that senior leadership the understanding as to what's going on. And if you look at it, and we'll talk about this later, about from an external partnership perspective, this will help give everyone upstream and downstream some additional insight onto how things are going and how they can help mitigate any sort of issues. So now we're going into from a prototype. So from an internal perspective, is more based on engagement. So when you're doing the engagement, you're doing obviously the planning, the grooming, story writing, and developing. But what you're doing is you're taking the metrics that everyone's looking at and measuring, and you're creating a more robust metrics program. And with that metrics program, you're creating a team scorecard. So this team scorecard is something that everyone will be able to measure against, not only internally, but you can also help with from an external perspective as well. So you're identifying your trends, you're measuring, and you're adding, you can even add it to the radiator. just so that everyone sees how everything's going. And what you can do is you can add in the additional teams. So you're not stuck with just technology. What you're doing is you can add in the sales team and have them provide a radiator, have them provide a scorecard, and have everything tie in. You can provide it with support. Support can provide the same information or similar information. Same with marketing, IT. I could go on about the different groups, but as you're bringing an agile organization to be more agile and to be that top 6%, and you're bringing in all those processes and agile values across the teams, this supply chain model can now help keep everyone informed in how everything is all tied in and move forward with those continuous improvement methodologies, to move forward with becoming more innovative. So you're now becoming more agile and nimble so that you can react to market demand or market changes. So the benefits is that this does keep teams honest. And we do have all the metrics that we can see how teams are going, but now in a more team and structured view, it's keeping them honest. It's keeping everything going and flowing. And you're improving the team support as you go along. So you're helping those teams' needs as per the example we just went through. It gives you that information and flow so that you can now create that improvement environment. And you're always in sync. And if you look at it from a team scorecard perspective, there's a lot of organizations now where they are looking at, instead of having individual performance reviews, they're now looking at teams. Creating this type of model will help you remove those individual reviews and now focus on a team perspective. And in the end, what you're going to have as you go through these metrics is you're going to be now looking at ways to improve. And you're going to have something to measure against within the teams and make those right decisions to get things flowing. So as we talked about earlier, the lag time. So you're increasing that lag time where you can improve the flow going across. So you're not creating those log jams. This will help remove those log jams and increase the innovation, the speed, and the productivity of all the teams. Now, if we look at it from an external partner perspective, so you have your supplier 1, as we talked about earlier, supplier 2, and each one, you're embedding software or you're using partnership type software to create your own and to move on. Now, most organizations that I have been in, when we're dealing with external partners, is sometimes we don't see the return that happens at supplier 2. We don't see what goes on, and this is where definitely that facepalm will happen. Is, let's say you have a delivery that's going to happen in the next 3 weeks. All of a sudden your partner comes out and says, oh, no, we can't deliver, or we can't provide the information you need to meet that delivery because we're having issues on our end. Creating a supply chain model gives you that additional transparency on what's going on with the partners. You may not have to understand everything that's going on between supplier 1 and supplier 2. You don't have to understand that, but you'll be able to see if there is something going on from a trend perspective or an issue perspective that's going to impact going down the road. And now you'll be able to mitigate faster on improving, either changing the release date or maybe changing what's going to be released. It's making you a little more nimble. So here's just an example of a dashboard between an organization and a partner and their 2 partners. So if you look at organization 1, for a particular release, let's just say they're 73% done with the expected stories and epics. Partner 2, or the main partner, is about 89%. Everyone is done except for partner B, because maybe partner B has some changes that they're just having a hard time getting done. But the organization will be able to see what's going on and maybe help partner B get that information out, provide that sort of additional work to help them get through. Or maybe the main partner is going to get them along. Or maybe they'll provide another solution to help to ensure that the main organization, is getting their software out on time. So the prototype from the external council is who's going to be on this council. So you can have your tech leads, middle management, senior management, IT leads, sales leads, support. It's really what it's about, what's going to make sure that you get the right information and make the right decisions. In the first couple slides where we talked about, there's not one supply chain management reference model that will fit everything. So it will be up to the partners to understand who will be able to make the best decisions with the information that they're going to each provide so that they can make sure that the flow is there. Okay, and the key thing is using the right metrics and ensuring that those metrics have the value that you need to push across. Create an external scorecard. And most organizations, they're looking at now kind of those Agile partnership agreements to have that information provided, to be able to see how things are going to make flow and how to make things better within each other. And as you go through that model and make things better, you're creating a better collaborative environment. And with that collaborative environment, you are now creating the forum boards. You can use dashboard review meetings or Scrum of Scrums. There's different ways to share that information, and it's ensuring that that information is of value and that the team is of a value to pushing things across. In the end, what should happen as you get things done is now you're getting rid of those kind of impediments. You're now creating those impediment boards from a partnership perspective. And now you're creating stories from a partnership perspective and moving things across. And then in the end, what will really happen is you'll have industry-wide continuous improvement. So your partner for the report embed software is they're improving as you are improving. And they'll just continuously improve. And now you now become that best software where you get to win. In the end, what will happen is you're now going to be avoiding going from this, senior managers face-palming each other, to this. They're now more engaged. They're now providing the information that they need to push across and get their strategy and get the software out and to improve client satisfaction. And that's a key thing that's been within the industry now is client satisfaction. Is people will only use the software if they like it, if it is easy to use, if they can relieve a need that they didn't have, that they had issues with before. And most organizations, when they're doing that partnership to help relieve that need, if the flow is not there and the information is not stagnant, but is slow to bubble up to help make the right decisions, you're going to see issues where there could be delays. Or worst case scenario is the software doesn't work as well as it should, and now your client satisfaction scores will start taking a hit, and maybe they will just change to another software. And there's a stat out there where there's like 67% of individuals where if they don't like a software and they move on to another vendor, they're not going to return. So organizations really want to keep the current client base while also trying to improve their market share, and ensuring that you have the right partnerships internally and externally is going to ensure that the flow of information, the flow of work going through, and the quality of work going through is there to meet and exceed their levels, and also make you maybe more of a market leader and also improving potential innovation. Because as we go through this model, there is times where it will make things flow much easier to the point where new ideas will start coming up on how to develop and how to create. and help each other from a partnership perspective to get that more innovative type flow. Thank you very much for listening to me. I hope I didn't speak too fast. I'm in my basement. It's a little cold, so I think I drank more coffee than I normally do.
In Reread Saturday News, Chapter 12 of Badass Agile Coaching, The Journey from Beginner to Mastery and Beyond, focuses on language. Language is both essential and a deterrent for creating understanding. This is a provocative statement, but the truth of the statement is not open for debate. Link in the show notes. In the next Software Process and Measurement Cast, number 741, we'll finally get to the essay, Using Flow Metrics to Plan in Kanban and Scrum Environments. Flow metrics are incredibly useful metrics for value streams and value chains. They are equally useful at the team level, and in some cases, even more powerful. We'll also have a visit from Susan Prente, who brings her Not a Scrumdamentalist column to the podcast. If process improvement is a never-ending journey, why do so many people ask, are we there yet? And why have they been asking that for 16 years, starting on year 17?